The first thing my sister Audra noticed about me that Thanksgiving was not my face, not my tired hands, not the pie I had baked from scratch before sunrise. It was my coat. I had barely stepped into her marble entryway when her eyes slid down my sleeves like they were inspecting damage. The house smelled like roasted turkey, cinnamon candles, and money that wanted to be admired. Cousins I had not seen in years stood under Audra's crystal chandelier, drinking wine from glasses thin enough to break under a strong breath. My name was Lenna Carrow. I was 45 years old, and I had arrived with a pumpkin pie, a used handbag, and the quiet hope that blood could still mean something. Audra looked at me as if I had tracked mud across her life. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that does not welcome you, only warns you. "Lenna," she said loudly enough for the foyer to pause, "you made it. I almost thought you would cancel because, well, this place is a little out of your comfort zone." A few people laughed. Not big laughs. Worse than that. Small, polite, cowardly laughs. The kind people give when they want to stay close to power. I told myself to breathe. I had spent too many years being the steady one, the forgiving one, the woman who swallowed sharp words because family dinners were supposed to survive them. Audra had always been beautiful in a polished, expensive way, with hair that never moved and bracelets that announced themselves before she entered a room. That night, she wore a cream silk dress and moved through her house like a queen, showing peasants a palace. She kept saying, "My home, my kitchen, my dining room," as if the walls themselves owed her loyalty. Her husband, Camden Vale, stood near the fireplace, nodding whenever someone complimented the crown molding. "Camden chose this place," Audra told Aunt Noreen. "He said I deserved something grand." I was standing close enough to hear it. I almost smiled then, not from joy, but from the strange sickness of watching a lie wear perfume. Because Camden had not chosen that house. Camden had not saved that house. Camden had not put one honest dollar into the down payment that made that house possible. I had. But Audra had spent 5 years telling everyone her husband bought it. And I had stayed silent because I thought protecting my sister from embarrassment was the same thing as loving her. Dinner began with prayer and ended with an execution. We sat at a long walnut table under candles that made everyone look softer than they were. Audra placed me near the end, beside the folding chair she had added for extra seating, though there were 2 empty upholstered chairs near her. My chair wobbled. My plate did not match. When Cousin Bram asked how work was, I said the bookkeeping office had cut hours, but I was still managing. Audra dabbed her mouth with a napkin and said, "Managing is such a heroic word for barely surviving." The room went still. She continued, enjoying the silence. "I mean, Lenna, you're 45. At some point, struggle stops being a season and becomes a personality." My fork froze above the green beans. My mother used to say that humiliation had a sound. It sounds like a room full of people deciding not to defend you. Audra leaned back and gave me the final blow in front of everyone. "You don't fit in this family anymore. Look at yourself." Then, softer but crueler, she added, "This is a successful family now. You can't keep showing up dressed like a reminder of where we came from." For one full second, I could not move. My throat tightened so hard that swallowing felt like pushing down glass. I looked around the table at faces I had bought groceries for when they were young, cousins I had driven to appointments, relatives I had loaned money to without ever asking for praise. No one spoke. Camden stared into his wine. Aunt Noreen adjusted her pearls. Bram looked down at his plate like the mashed potatoes had become fascinating. Audra smiled because she knew silence was the crowd's way of signing her permission slip. I stood carefully, folded my napkin, and said, "Thank you for dinner." Audra laughed. "Oh, don't be dramatic. I'm just being honest." I looked at her house then. The wide staircase, the tall windows, the polished floors. the imported tile she loved to brag about. Every corner had been part of the lie she built on my sacrifice. I had mortgaged my own peace for her. I had emptied my savings after our father died because Audra said she was desperate. Because she said her daughters needed a stable home, because she cried into the phone and said, "Lenna, I swear I'll pay you back. I swear on family." I left that night with my pie untouched on the counter and her words burning holes through my back. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe if you believe quiet people are not weak people. Sometimes the person sitting silently at the end of the table is the only one holding the truth. I drove home through cold November rain, hands shaking on the steering wheel. My apartment was small, and the heater made a knocking sound when it worked too hard. I hung up my old coat and sat at my kitchen table under a yellow light. Then I opened the blue file box I had not touched in years. Inside were bank records, notarized agreements, repayment schedules, scanned checks, and the deed documents that Audra had signed with a bored face back when she thought paperwork was just a bridge to luxury. 5 years earlier, I had given Audra $96,000 for the down payment on that house. Not a gift, a secured family loan, drafted by an attorney because my late father had begged me never to let love erase common sense. The agreement gave Audra and Camden 60 months to repay me in scheduled installments. It also included what the attorney called an emergency ownership clause. If they defaulted after written notice and failed to cure the debt, the security agreement allowed me to activate ownership rights through escrow and take control of the property interest tied to my down payment and lien position. Audra had laughed when she signed it. "Lenna, you and your little rules," she said. "You act like I'm some stranger." No, she was worse. A stranger would not know exactly where to cut. The next morning, I checked the payment ledger. Audra had missed one payment in July, then August, then September. In October, she sent half with a note that said, "Things are tight. Don't be weird." In November, nothing. I had already sent 2 written notices, both ignored. She had thrown me out of her family circle while standing inside a house legally tied to the money she refused to repay. That was when something inside me stopped begging. It did not rage. It did not scream. It simply closed. I called my attorney, Quincy Marlowe, a calm man with silver eyebrows and a voice like a locked door. He had handled the original paperwork. When I told him about Thanksgiving, he did not gasp or comfort me. He asked, "Do you want mercy, or do you want enforcement?" I looked at the file, at my father's old note clipped to the front. "Protect yourself, Lenna. Kindness without boundaries becomes an invitation." I said, "Enforcement." Quincy paused once, then said, "Then we begin today." Audra received the final notice on Monday morning by certified mail. She called me 7 times before noon. I did not answer. Then the messages started. First sweet. "Lenna, this is silly. Call me." Then annoyed. "You're embarrassing yourself." Then sharp. "Do not involve lawyers in family matters." Then finally, honest. "You can't do this to me. That house is my life." I listened to that one twice, not because I enjoyed her fear, but because she had finally said something true. The house was her life, not her children, not her husband, not her family, her house, her image, her staged holiday photographs and charity brunches, her polished lie. Quincy filed the necessary documents and notified the escrow agent. He also discovered something Audra had hidden from me. She had taken a private home equity line against the property using Camden's business associate as a guarantor, then used the money to host events, upgrade landscaping, and keep up a lifestyle she could not afford. She was not just late, she was sinking. And because my lien and agreement predated the later debt, my position was stronger than she had ever imagined. Every insult she gave me at Thanksgiving had been thrown from the deck of a ship already taking water. Audra came to my apartment 3 days later wearing sunglasses, though the sky was gray. She did not knock like a sister. She pounded like a landlord. When I opened the door, she pushed past me and looked around my living room with disgust, as if my furniture had personally offended her. "You need to stop this," she said. "You're jealous. That's what this is." I closed the door. "You missed the repayment deadline." She laughed, but her mouth trembled. "You really think some paper means you own my house?" "I think the paper says what you signed." Her face changed then. The mask slipped just enough to show the panic underneath. "I let you come to my Thanksgiving," she hissed. "I let you sit at my table. You put me on a folding chair and told me I didn't fit in the family." She stepped closer, perfume heavy and bitter. "Because you don't. You never learned how to rise. You just learned how to cling." That sentence should have broken me. Instead, it clarified everything. Some people do not hate you because you failed. They hate you because you helped them succeed, and your existence remembers the debt. I told her to leave. Audra grabbed her purse so hard the chain snapped against her wrist. "If you go through with this, I'll tell everyone you're trying to steal from me." I opened the door. "Then I'll tell everyone why the house exists." For the first time in my life, Audra had no answer. She left with her heels striking the hallway like little gunshots. That evening, Camden called. His voice had none of Audra's theater. He sounded tired, scared, and smaller than I expected. "Lenna," he said, "I didn't know the full arrangement." I believed him halfway. Camden had always been the kind of man who enjoyed benefits without investigating their source. He admitted Audra had told people he bought the house because it sounded better. He also admitted they could not cure the missed payments. Their accounts were strained. The equity line had ballooned. Audra's social club dues were overdue. The Thanksgiving party had been partly paid on credit. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I said, "Camden, I am not your villain. I am your receipt." The public collapse began at the Winter Heritage Luncheon, the event Audra had chaired for 3 years. She loved that luncheon because it gave her a stage. Local business owners attended. Church ladies attended. Women who measured one another by centerpieces attended. Audra had planned to host the pre-luncheon donor tour at her home, showing off decorations and collecting praise like rent. But 2 days before the event, Quincy sent formal notice to all relevant parties that ownership control and property enforcement proceedings had been activated. The donor tour had to be canceled because Audra could no longer truthfully claim full authority over the residents. Someone from the planning committee asked questions. Someone else found the filing. And by Friday afternoon, the same people who had admired her staircase were whispering that her poor sister had paid for the house. Audra tried to outrun it. She posted a smiling photo with the caption, "Grateful for everything my husband and I built." That was a mistake. Aunt Noreen commented first, "Is this about the house situation?" Then Cousin Bram, who had stayed silent at Thanksgiving, sent me a private message asking if it was true. I did not answer him privately. I sent one public statement through Quincy, clean and simple. Ms. Lenna Carrow provided the documented down payment for the property under a secured repayment agreement. After repeated default and written notice, enforcement rights were activated. If you are still listening, subscribe before the final turn, because this is the part where pride tries to fight paperwork and loses badly. Audra called a family meeting the next Sunday at Aunt Noreen's house. She expected to control the room the way she always had, with volume, tears, and carefully aimed shame. I arrived with Quincy. That alone changed the air. Audra stood by the fireplace, pale but dressed beautifully, as if elegance could serve as evidence. "Lenna is trying to ruin me," she announced. "Over money." I looked at the relatives who had watched her humiliate me. "Not over money," I said. "Over repayment, over lies, over using family as a costume while treating me like a stain." Audra snapped, "You gave me that money because you wanted to feel important." Quincy opened his folder. "Actually, Ms. Carrow transferred funds under a notarized agreement signed by you and your husband. He placed copies on the coffee table. There is a special kind of silence that falls when truth arrives with page numbers. Aunt Noreen picked up the first document. Bram picked up the second. Camden stood near the wall looking as if he wished the floor would take him. Audra's last offense was cruelty. She turned to the room and said, "Look at her. Does she look like someone who should own anything like my house?" The words landed hard, but this time they did not land on me alone. They landed on everyone who had believed her. They landed on the lie. Quincy looked at Audra and said, "That house is not protected by appearances, Mrs. Vale. It is governed by signatures." Then he explained the missed payments, the ignored notices, the cure period, and the clause. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Every calm sentence took another brick out of Audra's castle. When he mentioned the home equity line, Camden finally spoke. "Audra, you told me that was handled." She spun on him. "Don't you dare act innocent." He replied quietly, "I'm acting informed for the first time." That was when her public image truly cracked. Not when I accused her, not when the documents appeared, when her own husband stopped performing beside her. 2 weeks later, I walked through the front door of that house with Quincy, a locksmith, and a property manager named Sella Boone. I did not feel victorious the way people imagine revenge feels. I felt older. I felt sad. I felt the weight of every year I had made myself smaller so Audra could feel tall. The house looked different without a party inside it. Less royal, more hollow. Audra had removed many decorations, but she left behind framed photos from charity events, her name printed on plaques, programs from luncheons where she had smiled beside donors while owing her sister money. In the dining room, the same walnut table stood under the chandelier. I touched the back of the chair where I had sat on Thanksgiving. Not the folding chair. That was gone. Of course it was. Audra always removed evidence that made her look bad, but she could not remove the memory. Salah asked what I wanted done with the property. Sell it? Lease it? Move in? I looked around slowly and said, "Not yet." Audra moved into a rental townhouse across town, smaller but still nicer than my apartment. Do not feel too sorry for her. She did not end up under a bridge. She ended up where her real budget had always belonged. The difference was that now she had to live without applause. Camden filed for legal separation after discovering more unpaid accounts. Her daughters, Maribel and Sloane, both adults by then, came to see me separately. I expected anger. Instead, Maribel cried in my kitchen and said, "Mom told us you resented us because you never had what she had." I had to sit down after hearing that. Audra had not only stolen credit for my help, she had turned my sacrifice into jealousy in the minds of her children. I showed them the documents, not to poison them against their mother, but to free myself from being the villain in a story I had funded. Sloane hugged me before she left. She whispered, "Aunt Lenna, I'm sorry we believed her." Those words did not fix everything, but they reached a place in me money never could. 3 months later, I sold the house. Not because I could not keep it, but because I refused to let my life become a museum of Audra's lies. After the debts, legal costs, and settlement issues were handled, I had enough to buy a modest cottage outside town with a porch, a garden, and a kitchen that caught morning light. I kept my old coat for one winter more, not because I had to, but because it reminded me that dignity is not stitched into expensive fabric. Audra tried one final time to rewrite the ending. She sent a long email saying she hoped I was happy destroying a family. I answered with one sentence. "I did not destroy the family, Audra. I stopped financing the performance." She never replied. At the next Thanksgiving, I did not host a grand dinner. I made roasted chicken, sweet potatoes, and apple crisp. Maribel and Sloane came. Camden sent flowers with a note of apology. Aunt Noreen called twice, but I let it ring. That evening, I sat on my porch wrapped in a blanket, watching the last orange light leave the trees. For years, I thought revenge meant making someone suffer the way they made you suffer. But real revenge, the clean kind, is not becoming cruel. It is becoming unavailable for abuse. Audra had wanted me to feel poor in front of a rich table. She wanted me to shrink while standing inside a house built on my kindness. Instead, she taught me the final lesson my father had tried to leave behind. Never confuse silence with surrender, and never hand your future to someone who only calls you family when they need saving. My sister said I was too poor for the family. Then the house she bragged about turned out to be tied to my name, my sacrifice, and my signature. In the end, I did not need to shout. I did not need to beg. I simply let the truth walk in with documents, and every lie in that beautiful house lost its keys.